It's the weekend. Time to get back in the garage and get back to work on this Aston Martin project. So, when we left this project last week, I was not able to get that dang harness unplugged from the car, or at least I couldn't figure out where the heck it was. But thank you to Ian on YouTube there, giving me a couple of pointers on where to look and pointing me over to Steve at Aston 1936 on one of his videos of a tour of the inside of the arch liner on the passenger side front wheel. I was able to get in there and find that boot. Take a look. Thanks to user Ian448, he kind of gave me some pointers, telling me that he was pretty sure that that wiring harness came in on the passenger side, like I was suspecting, and then showed me a video that Steve from Aston 1936 had posted where he did a little tour of the under the tire well there. So I put the car up on the lift a little bit higher, took out that arch cover into there, and did a little exploring, and well, I found it. Let me show you what I found. All right, so if we go up under here, I had to remove the washer bottle tank and then get that out of the way, which was kind of interesting. I'll show you that in a second, but this is the boot that goes through the firewall. So I have that on the new engine's harness, still has this boot on it. So I have the boot. I was able to pull the boot out through the firewall. So now hopefully I can get a little light in there, and when I'm inside the car now, I should be able to locate those plugs and get them unplugged. Here's the washer fluid tank that I took out, and I don't know if you can really see this very well, but over here on this side here, the bracket is broken. I put some tape on there to kind of keep it together for right now, but it was broken. And then there's this one here, which is fine. And then this one was just completely disconnected, so there was no screw in there, or bolt. So out of the 3 bolts that are supposed to be holding this thing in the car, only one of them was actually doing anything. The other 2 were not doing anything at all. So that'll be a good thing to fix. I'll look into seeing if I can get a new one of these tanks. If it's out of a Volvo or something, maybe it's cheap. I'm not gonna probably buy an Aston Martin one. Since I have both the pieces here, I think I should be able to epoxy this back together without too much trouble, and should be just as strong. And then I'll get a new bolt for this back one and try to bolt that in. Although, to be quite honest, I'm not sure how I'm gonna get that bolted in, because the body panel is right there, and then you gotta somehow reach your arm around the back of this tank in order to get to that, to put it in. So that'll be an interesting thing to do all by itself. So we'll see how it goes. I'll keep you posted. So I figured I'd try to get a camera angle for you to see what kind of position I had to get in to get here. So my feet are in the back seat of the car. I'm laying on the passenger seat, and I'm head down here in the field well. So let's see if we can get these things unplugged. All right, so there's 4 plugs. Kind of see them up here. Now the question is getting them to unplug. But I think they shouldn't be too hard. I think I might have to pull this little red tab out a little bit like that, and then push the little button, and then boom. There's one. Two. Trouble seeing this one now. 3. Four. Ha 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 ha. Success. 4 cables unplugged. Step 15 done. So now with that finally done, the next steps are to get this thing up in the air, get the wheels and arch liners out, and start doing all the disassembly from underneath for the most part. So here we go. So the next step is to go ahead and remove all these inside the wheel well covers, so the arch liners. One thing that was interesting is that they told you to put this outside of the jack, because the jack point for this car is where this thing would normally be mounted to the frame. So you have to move it out of the way. You got to move it out of the way right here to get this thing to sit. So that's why I had to pull this down. On the other side, I already done it because I pulled the one out already, so it worked out pretty good. And then on the back, they're not an issue. All right, so now we're just gonna take out this arch liner from this side. So I'm just gonna go ahead and remove all these screws out of the wheel well here. They're pretty much the same exact color as the arch liners and almost the body as well. So they're not necessarily the easiest to find, but there's not too many of them, so it's, you know, not crazy difficult. But they're scattered around a little bit. There's some under the body, and then there's obviously some up in the wheel well. And then just got to get those pulled out of there. So it's pretty dirty. There's all kinds of road gravel and grime coming out of here. So to be quite honest, it's kind of a fun experiment, just because when I put this thing back together, I'm really hoping to put it back together super clean and have the whole thing just really, you know, nice and right out of the factory. So it should be really nice and clean, and maybe no more rattles and bumps and anything like that coming out from underneath this car. Looks like some of this sound dampening material has seen better days. I'm definitely going to look into seeing what I can do to get this stuff either recovered or replaced so it can be in better condition. I think the foam is actually fine. It's just that all the plastic that was probably on it when it first came out is completely destroyed. So we'll take a look at that. One thing that's kind of funny about doing all this is that instead of just working on my car and dealing with the things I got to deal with here, I also have to deal with the camera and the lighting and all that kind of fun stuff for you guys. Let me know if it's working out. Yeah, so Steve over there at Aston 1936 kind of told me how it changes everything when you got to change the camera angles and the lighting. And it's quite disruptive. You're trying to get some work done, but yet you're having to deal with cameras and stuff like that. But it's all part of the process. It's fun. I've actually had all these wheel liners out before. When I did the suspension, I replaced all four corner struts. So all this has been out before. So this part isn't new. Doesn't mean though that I remember where everything goes. So yeah, I just pretty much having to try to get all these bolts out that hold these liners in. There's one though, for some reason, that they put in behind a bracket. So instead of being able to use my drill, I had to use the ratchet. No big deal. And then of course you got my two vicious shop dogs protecting everything, running around, making their little cameo appearance there. But for the most part, this went pretty smooth. Lots of dirt, lots of gravel coming out of there. But as you'll see here in a second, the rear liners are in much better condition than the front ones were, for sure. It's quite interesting, actually. There we go. 3 down, 1 to go. All right, we'll try from down there. Got my shop dogs keeping an eye on things. They're vicious. So at this point, I'm just going to continue doing this. Now on this side, it's interesting because the fuel filler drain, overspill drain hose comes down through this liner, and I'll show you that in a second, so you get to be able to see that, how that works and how it clips in there. But otherwise, this is the same as all the other sides. I went ahead and messed around with the camera stuff as opposed to just showing you from the outside again. So as much as it might be somewhat of a
task to have to move the camera and all the lighting around. It's also kind of fun. I can just put some different camera angles in there. So anyway, just trying to make it slightly more entertaining, trying to keep you guys engaged and able to keep watching. So it's been a pretty fun project so far, and it's definitely challenging. So it'd be pretty cool if everybody enjoys it. That's why I'm going to try to keep it a little bit of variety going on. So there you go.
One thing to keep in mind here is that the fuel filler overflow drain holes, basically, so when you're filling the car up, if you spill out over the fill cap, then it'll come down through here. That's attached to this liner here, but only with like some loops that hold this drain hose here. So that it should just slide right out when I pull this thing out. So actually they were just little side hooks. So just pull it out the side, we're good to go. So there you go, pour down. Okay, there you go, step 16. So arch liners was step 16. There was a lot of screws coming out of there for all that. So remember, I have my little Tupperware labeled S16, step 16, and I'll keep that over here with all the rest of these parts. And then when I go to put it back together, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that this will make it a lot easier, and hopefully I will not be have a bunch of leftover parts or be missing any parts. That's the plan. All right, let's go on to step 17. Next step is to remove all these under trays and shear plates. Here we go. And the washers. When I take the frames out, I guess they have spacers in there. And one of the notes said to be very careful and remember where they all go, or mark where they all go, so when we pull this thing down, they can all go back where they where they were before. So thankfully that was just a plate, so that doesn't, they were all the same. They're all four corners, so not as big a deal. All right, last one. There we go. I'm not sure it'll actually save me, but it probably would save my life if this car came crashing down on me. So for right now, I'm leaving these stacked tires up underneath here. And that way, if this brand new lift that I installed decides to give out, well, at least there'll be something that stops the car before it comes all the way down on me, I hope. Anyway, just for safety's sake, I guess. Well, the next step is to remove this air box right here. There's one on each side. So I don't know. I know Steve over at Aston 1936 has a video on removing these. So if I can't figure it out too easily, I'll go over there, but we'll give it a shot. Just found a nut here on this bracket, which just holds the airbox, so it's not the end of the world, but completely loose. So I don't know. Both of them actually are very loose. I've never messed with those, so it wasn't me. Looks like there's one more up underneath up front. Well, there you go. It's loose. Now I'll just disconnect the hoses and we should be good. All right, gotta get this hose taken off the box. Well, maybe I'll go check out Steve's video. Okay, I went and watched Steve's video. I was right. Take that screw out. You got to rotate this hose just a bit, pop it off the bottom there, the air box. So now I just have to get the other hose off. Okay, well, once again, Steve saves the day. I went and watched this video again. He does take the bottom of this air box off so we can get that front intake hose off. So here we go. Okay, so we can break this open. Well, I'm seeing that these air filters needed to be replaced really bad anyway. Wow. I don't know if you can see that, but I mean, obviously it's on the right side of the air filter, but that's still bad. These air filters are toast. Okay, well, now that that hose is off, I think everything's disconnected. Funny how it's always those little simple things that get you caught up the most. Okay, well, that took a little bit of patience and finesse. So thank you, Steve, for showing that. And okay, on to the next one. Okay, wow. When I first bought this car, it was about 11,000 miles ago. I took it into a British car shop down in San Luis Obispo, California, and I had them do a tune-up on it for me. Oil change, and they were supposed to have changed these filters. There is no way these filters are 11,000 miles of filter. I just don't drive it enough. There's just no way. So clearly that did not get done. This is I want to say borderline neglect, but I think it's actually more than that. I think it's just pure neglect. So yeah, we're lucky we didn't have a bigger engine problem, although who knows? We don't even know what we have a problem yet. So yeah, wow. It's just goes to show you gotta take care of this stuff yourself. Don't trust the mechanics. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that about all mechanics. But it's best to just do things yourself, that way you know it's done. So the next step is to remove the front bumper. So I'm trying to work that out. We'll figure out how that works. It's not easy.
So I went ahead and put this on time lapse because I figured it was going to take me a while to figure this out. On this side, there was like 4 bolts. 3 went one direction, 1 went the other direction. There was a bolt on, the same on both sides. And then there were some clips holding those grills into the open holes, but those weren't really structural. I lowered the car to see if I could figure out anything from the top. Nothing seemed to be holding it in the middle as far as screws or bolts, but it was definitely physically held there. So I could not figure out, what was holding it in. And the manual started, it told you there were some clips and some things to pull, but I was just sketchy and I was a little afraid to do it. So it just took me a long time to make sure I was doing it right, but eventually off it comes.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna lie. That was kind of scary and a little bit tough. So the big problem is that there's these clips right here that hold the bumper on, and I don't know that. So it's pulling on this thing is kind of sketch. I'm trying to figure out if I'm missing a bolt somewhere or if they're really clipped in. So thankfully they're just clipped in. So I did find it in the manual. It does say to do, basically just pull on it or even use a screwdriver, which seemed real sketch to me, but yeah, there's the 4 bolts on each side, and then they're just clipped in up on the front. So yeah, okay, got that off. Next step. All right, next I'm supposed to be removing the fuse box and the bracket. I removed the fuse box earlier, so when I was trying to find that harness, so that's already gone, but here's the bracket. So next I'm gonna go ahead and just get this bracket out of here. Should be no big deal.
So I should have never said it was gonna be easy. Nothing's ever easy when you think it's gonna be. There was a bunch of the harness cables, the plugs were all sort of plugged into this bracket, so it was kind of a pain to get them all undone. And then it took me a minute to get it out of there. I don't think this was the best time to have removed this thing. I think there would have been a better time in the future.
I am not convinced that that's when that needed to come out. That was not the right time.
Next, I had to go ahead and remove all the ground wires from the harness that were attached to the chassis. There was 3 studs there. The manual said there was 2, but there was 3. So I just labeled them each. So all the ground wires are supposed to go back to the same studs, even though they all seem the same. But anyway, got them all off, labeled them all. Should be easy.
All right, so we got to get the rest of the harness unplugged from underneath here. This is underneath the passenger side wheel well. I got to take this bracket off to get these things unplugged. So I'll tell you what, the lift might not be necessary for every single step of this project, but it is pretty nice not having to crawl around on the ground. Well, I thought that was the cover that I needed to take off, but it's interesting, the whole thing kind of came off together. We'll have to figure this out.
So it turns out that cover holds the PCM in as well. So it's all just sort of held in with the same 3 screws. So when I unscrewed what I thought was just the cover or the bracket holding the plugs in, it actually brought the whole PCM down. So no big deal. Worked out pretty good, actually. Once I got the bracket off there, I was able to get the rest out as well.
Well, there was the cover. And now these all just snap off. Like that. So I guess we'll just take this whole thing out anyway. I think it's the PCM needs to come out anyway. So I believe there's one on each side. Hey, all in all, that was a pretty successful day. I'm gonna call it quits now, get cleaned up, maybe go take care of some other kinds of projects I got going on around the house. But if you wanna follow along and see how this project progresses, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.